Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 546 Leaving Midgard. Chapter 546 Leaving Midgard. A month went by in a flash and the time for departure finally arrived. Alaric and all of the members of House Silversword gathered outside Midgard, riding their horses under the heat of the sun. Tristan and several high-ranking military officers were chatting with Alaric. "I hope you have a pleasant journey, Lord Venerable." Tristan and the military officers bowed deeply. Alaric nodded with a smile. "With you guys taking charge of Midgard, I am very assured. Let's meet again soon." The group exchanged farewells for the last time. Half an hour later, House Silversword departed under the watchful eyes of the soldiers. At the forefront, Alaric was riding a disaster-grade warhorse. He looked back and scanned the faces of the stalwart warriors of House Silversword. Unknowingly, his army had expanded to over 30,000 people. Over 20,000 of them were soldiers with no allegiances, and they only recently swore to follow him. His army was already on the level of a duke. Normally, this wouldn't be allowed, but Alaric was given a special approval by the Estonian emperor. It was a clear show that the emperor heavily favored him. Who would have thought a small countryside noble household could grow this big in just a few years? Life is truly unpredictable. Alaric shook his head with an emotional sigh. "What happened? Why are you shaking your head?" A melodious voice drifted into his ears. Turning his head, he saw Ivana, moving closer to him on her golden-maned warhorse. With a faint smile, Alaric replied, "I just thought of something." It didn't seem like he wanted to share it, so Ivana didn't bother to ask. She just stared at him suspiciously as she urged her horse to match the pace of Alaric's horse. "Now that the war is over, what do you plan to do when you get home?" she asked, seemingly hinting at something. Alaric sent her a knowing look as he responded. "Didn't I tell you already? I will visit your kingdom and ask your father's permission to marry you." Ivana feigned indifference, but she could feel her heart beating faster when he spoke those words. "Why would you need his permission? We can just hold the wedding without telling him." Alaric raised an eyebrow and said in a teasing voice, "Are you that eager to marry me?" Looking at his handsome face, Ivana almost nodded subconsciously, but she restrained herself and let out a snort. Alaric laughed at her reaction. The two were silent for a moment before Alaric broke the silence. "I know you have some disagreements with your father, but we still need his permission. Don't you think it's also time to have a proper chat with him?" Hearing this, Ivana lowered her head, keeping her silence. All this time, she blamed her father for her mother's death, but she knew that it wasn't his fault. "Ivana, do you truly resent your father?" Alaric asked. The elven princess shook her head. "No." Alaric didn't know what had happened, but he could already guess it. He had been told by the late Neo that Ivana started distancing from her father after the death of her mother, who was the former elven queen. "You are hurt, but have you thought what your father is feeling all this time?" Alaric didn't want her relationship with her father to stay this way. Seeing that she had gone silent, Alaric urged his horse to move closer to hers. He then leaned forward and patted her shoulder. "You have plenty of time to think about it. If you need someone to discuss this matter, you can find me anytime. I will make time for you." Ivana could sense his genuine concern, and this made her feel a wave of warmth in her heart. "Thank you." Roar. Zephyr's roar interrupted their intimate conversation. Alaric looked up and saw the draconic lion flying above them, looking incredibly happy as it chased a flock of migratory birds. When he turned his gaze back to Ivana, he realized that she had already returned to her position, next to Matilda and the others. A week later, they reached the borders of Atarkan, where they met Lucas and his army. The two groups merged and their total troop count swelled to close to 50,000. When the father and son were reunited, there was no emotional exchange of words. They just greeted each other with smiles on their faces. "I thought I was already impressive for doubling the size of my troops, but it looks like you are more impressive than your father." Lucas chuckled, looking incredibly proud of his son. Alaric laughed heartily and replied with a joking tone, "You need to up your game, Dad." The two chatted briefly before they resumed the journey. "Who took over Zerkith after you left?" Alaric asked while looking at his father. "It's a loyal subordinate of His Majesty." You might not have heard of his name since he disappeared from the public eye for several decades. They talked about random things along the way, and Alaric later brought up the topic of his marriage proposal to Ivana. So you finally decided to marry her. It took you so long. Lucas seemed to be dissatisfied with his slow progress. Alaric smiled awkwardly. Dad. We were busy with so many dash. Lucas waved his hand with a snort. Enough with your excuses. When we get home, give me a grandchild already so your little sister will have someone to play with. Alaric's eyes widened upon hearing this. You must be kidding, Dad. I'm not even 20 yet. Who cares if you're not 20? Lucas was displeased. You are already married to Hershey, and you are even marrying a second wife. Don't tell me you're thinking of having a child in your 30s. His spittle flew all over his son's face. Alaric had to cover his face with manna. Dad. Dudu is there to play with my sister. He responded with a forced smile. Dudu. That little glutton? I'm afraid your sister will learn to be mischievous like her. Lucas laughed when he recalled the little half-dragon girl. Chapter 547 News of their return. Chapter 547 News of their return. Meanwhile, in North Pinetown, inside the main mansion of House Silversword's estate, Hershey was helping Dudu improve her etiquette. Sister, do I really have to sit like this while eating? The little girl pouted as she kept her posture straight. She was visibly struggling to maintain her posture, and it made her a bit annoyed. Hershey giggled when she saw the girl's reaction. Dudu, a young lady needs to be mindful of her etiquette. You wouldn't attract a boy if you are lacking in table manners. She patted her head gently. Dudu furrowed her eyebrows, seemingly dissatisfied. But I don't want to attract boys. Hershey smiled helplessly. You will understand when you grow a bit older. Just listen to me and I promise that you can have a delicious steak for lunch. Hearing this, Dudu's little mouth watered in excitement. Really? Hershey eagerly nodded while squinting her eyes. Absolutely. Okay. I will listen to you, sister. Hurry up and teach me what to do next. The little girl urged, her eyes glowing. Hershey could only shake her head helplessly. This little girl was so easy to please. But sometimes, she was also difficult to control. Many of Dudu's etiquette teachers had already given up. Even with the promise of a high salary, no one dared to tutor her now. Because of this, Hershey, Maria, and Jade Christine decided to teach the girl by themselves. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, a series of knocks on the door interrupted them. Hershey raised an eyebrow and said, You may come in. Creak. Elena stepped inside the room and bowed to Hershey. My lady, Her Highness, and the madam have requested your presence. They are waiting for you at the main hall. Hearing this, Hershey was surprised. The two ladies rarely called her, and every time they did, it was usually for something important. Thinking that something must have come up, she nodded her head. All right, I will be there in a moment. Elena didn't say anything more and stepped out of the room to wait for her. Dudu, let's continue our class later. You can play with the servants, but don't be mischievous. Okay? Hershey reminded the little girl. Dudu's eyes lit up and she gave her a thumbs up. Yes, sister. I promise. All right, you can go now. Hershey lifted her off the chair. As soon as her feet landed on the floor, Dudu rushed out of the room like a little squirrel. Goodbye, sister. See you later. Be careful, Dudu. The floor is slippery. Hershey shouted, but the girl had already run off, her laughter echoing across the hallway. Hershey let out a sigh. She was taken aback when she noticed that Elena was waiting outside the room. Elena, you didn't have to wait here. Seeing her concerned look, Elena smiled. I'm fine, my lady. I'm already used to it. I have been doing this since I was still small. All right, but you should get some rest. I can walk there on my own. Hershey suggested. Elena shook her head. I am instructed to take you to the main hall, my lady. I must apologize for disobeying you. Knowing that she couldn't force her, Hershey no longer insisted. Fine, but when will you start to speak informally with me? Haven't we discussed this already? The two chatted as they headed to the main hall. When they arrived at the main hall, Hershey saw Maria carrying her baby daughter in her arms. Jade Christine was also there, playing with the baby. Greetings, Your Highness and Madam. Hershey curtsied with a respectful expression. Jade Christine beckoned to her and motioned for her to sit. Come here and sit with us. We have something to tell you. Looking at the smiles on the ladies' faces, Hershey could tell that something good must have happened. Hershey took her seat on the sofa adjacent to where the ladies were seated. Meanwhile, Elena approached Maria and volunteered to carry the baby. Thank you. Maria carefully handed her baby daughter to her. The baby girl reached out to Elena's face, giggling with joy. Hee hee. While Elena was playing with the baby girl, the two madams chatted with Hershey. Before we tell you the news, how is Dudu's progress in her etiquette class? Jade Christine asked with an elegant smile. Hershey sighed and forced a smile. Dudu already knows how to walk like a proper young lady, but her table manners need some work. Jade Christine and Maria chuckled upon hearing this. They seemed to have expected this since the three of them had been teaching the little girl alternately. Just be patient with her. In a few years, she will realize the importance of etiquette on her own. Maria consoled her. I hope so too. Hershey nodded. They chatted about other things before they got to the topic. So here's what happened. They are coming home now. Hershey covered her mouth in shock, her eyes glistening with tears. So they are finally coming home. That's great news. Jade Christine and Maria exchanged happy smiles. They then stood up and went to hug Hershey. There. We can all be at ease now. Jade Christine mumbled. Oh right, there is one more good news. Maria exclaimed. Hershey rubbed her teary eyes and looked at the two madams with curiosity. Maria grabbed Hershey's hands and said, Alaric has become a mythical knight. Hearing this, Hershey was filled with disbelief. Her eyes widened like saucers and her mouth went agape. What? Jade Christine laughed at her reaction. We had the same reaction when we heard the news. That's right. We couldn't believe it either, but the message was sent by your father-in-law, so it should be true. Maria added. Hershey felt proud of her husband's growth. When will they get here? She asked, looking incredibly excited. She missed Alaric's touch, his warmth, and his smell. It depends on the weather, but the latest should be a month. Jade Christine responded after some calculations. I see. That's wonderful. The three women happily chatted. Chapter 548 Stubborn Beast Refuses to Submit. Chapter 548 Stubborn Beast Refuses to Submit. With the size of their troops, it took them nearly 2 weeks to leave the borders of Haroon. Alaric could have returned home early if he had chosen to ride Zephyr. But he decided to march with the troops because he was looking for an opportunity to use the catastrophe-grade steed card. If he were to use it and summon a beast at the estate, he wouldn't be able to explain how he had captured or taken control of it. He was only lucky that his family didn't have many questions about Zephyr, but he couldn't do the same thing again. Lucas and Maria might not be the interrogative type, but his birth mother, Jade Christine, was different. He had to make a reasonable story so that no one would find it unusual for another catastrophe-grade beast to appear next to him. At this moment, the troops were setting up camp. They had been marching with little rest over the last 2 weeks, so Alaric suggested that they should set up camp and rest for the night. I will go out for a light mana training, Alaric informed his father. Since his mission had been updated, he rarely skipped his training. With his efforts, he had already made a decent amount of progress. Lucas didn't find it unusual. Alaric would always find time to do some light training in the middle of their rest. All right, just don't go too far from the camp. This area is known for having some really nasty creatures, so you must not be careless. He reminded his son with a stern look. Alaric nodded with a faint smile. I will be careful, Dad. After bidding his father farewell, he turned around and left on his horse. Hiya! Alaric lifted his head and noticed that the sky was getting darker. He narrowed his eyes and moved his gaze back to the road. With his enhanced vision, he could clearly see in the dark. He could also sense the beasts that were hiding nearby. 20 minutes later, Alaric stopped his horse near a stream. The horse seemed to be restless and it refused to get closer to the stream. Alaric wasn't surprised by the horse's reaction. He sensed that there was a powerful monster lurking beneath the shallow waters. Should I capture this beast? Alaric thought, but he quickly abandoned the idea. The monster was just sleeping in its territory and he felt that it was wrong to disturb it. It should have sensed me by now. But why isn't it moving? What a strange beast. Alaric was amused at the peculiar nature of the monster. Most powerful beasts were territorial and highly aggressive. When someone stepped into their territory, they would immediately attack or force the other to leave. However, the monster in the stream didn't seem to mind his presence. Just stay where you are. I am not going to hurt you. I will leave after I handle some things. Alaric spoke while looking in a certain direction. It was where the beast was hidden. Catastrophe-grade monsters could understand human speech. There were even some that could speak the common language. Alaric smiled after getting no response from the beast. Do you want to use your catastrophe-grade steed card? Yes. No. With a glint of anticipation, he clicked yes. A bright light flashed in front of him. Alaric kept his eyes open the entire time and witnessed the magical moment. Archaic patterns emerged to form what seemed to be some kind of portal. From this bright portal, a ball of light was slowly taking shape and forming a giant mass. The bright light was starting to hurt his eyes, so Alaric coated his eyes with mana to shield them from the blinding brightness. Even with the power of a venerable, I still cannot fathom this mysterious force. In the next moment, the blinding light vanished, revealing a creature with a glacial blue body. As soon as it appeared, the surrounding temperature dropped significantly. It had the body of a horse, and in the place where its head should be was the upper body of a naked woman. She had dark blue hair and pale blue skin that seemed to embody the cold glaciers. Its pair of golden eyes was staring at Alaric with an expressionless look. Human. The creature spoke in a cold, almost mechanical voice. Just right after it spoke, it grabbed its head, seemingly in great agony. Blood trickled down from the corner of its lips. What is going on? Alaric was confused. The creature seemed to be resisting something. I understand now. It's trying to resist the forced submission that has been cast by the system upon it. Ah! The creature screamed in a shrill voice. Its mana was fluctuating intensely. Alaric covered the area in his ice domain to prevent the others from sensing what was happening. It's only a catastrophe-grade beast, but its mana is almost at my level. Do you want to use appraisal on the selected target? Yes. No. Alaric clicked, yes. Glacial Centaur Sovereign. Catastrophe grade EXP. 4991/5000. Potential L. Innate ability, Water Manipulation, L. Expanded Energy Core, L. Transformation, L. Heart of Ice, SSS. Innate Divine Strength, SSS. Water Resistance, SSS. Superior Perception, SS. Soul Protection, SS. Mana Gathering, SS. Strength. 999. Stamina. 999. Agility. 999. Vitality. 999. Endurance. 999. Mana. 1,500. Alaric couldn't believe what he was looking at. The creature's attributes had all exceeded the threshold of a catastrophe-grade beast. Just what kind of monster did I summon? Until now, the Glacial Centaur Sovereign was still resisting the forced submission of the system. Suddenly, the beast stopped moving and it stared at Alaric with a deep look. Human. Why do you possess the power of the ancients? It asked in a shaking voice, blood trickling down from its orifices. Alaric frowned. I don't know what you are talking about. The ancients? What the hell is that? The creature sighed in resignation and reluctantly lowered its head. I greet my master. I am called Nivis, the queen of the ice centaurs. Alaric cautiously approached the creature. Are you willing to submit to me? Nivis lifted her head, and a trace of rage and humiliation flashed in her golden eyes. If you didn't possess the power of the ancients, I would have already killed you right here even if I end up dying. Alaric could tell that it wasn't lying, but he wasn't afraid. With the exception of his mana, all his attributes were higher than hers. Though she possessed incredibly powerful innate abilities, Alaric was confident that he could overpower her if he used his destruction domain. This is bad. This beast isn't under my full control and it might attack me or the people around me if it wanted to. Should I just kill it and take its beast soul crystal? A thought flashed in his mind. Nivis was indeed powerful, but she was like a ticking time bomb. She could betray him at any moment. After wrestling with his thoughts, Alaric narrowed his eyes. What would make you willingly surrender to me? Nivis scoffed and stared at him with contempt. I would never willingly submit to a human. Not even you who possess the power of the ancients. I see. You leave me with no choice then. Alaric shook his head with a regretful look. He raised his arm and summoned the destruction element. The stubborn beast was stunned when it sensed the familiar powerful coming from him. How can a human wield that power? You. Just who are you? Nivis revealed a fearful look. That is the power of annihilation. How could this be? Wait. Nivis hesitated for a moment. Alaric unsummoned the destruction element and raised an eyebrow. I will listen to you, but can you promise me one thing? Nivis stared at the young human warrior in renewed light. If it's him, maybe he can. Let's hear it first. This was a special creature, so Alaric was willing to make some compromise. Nivis took a deep breath and spoke. I don't know where exactly we are now, but beyond this continent lies a vast ocean. On the opposite side is where my home should be located. If you grow strong enough to navigate the vast ocean, I hope you can help me find my home. A place beyond the continent? Is there something like that? He feigned composure and asked. You mean that my strength is still insufficient to travel the vast ocean? Nivis scoffed in disdain. At my peak, I could squash 100 of you with a single finger. She paused for a moment before she continued. In the vast ocean, there are numerous creatures with unparalleled might. They can devour the fragile ships that you humans make, and they can roam freely in the sea without fear. With a deep look, she added. To safely cross the ocean, you must be strong enough to protect yourself against these creatures. And how strong do I need to be? Alaric felt that he had taken a glimpse of the realm beyond the Venerables, and it filled him with excitement. Chapter 549 Answers that left him with more questions. Chapter 549 Answers that left him with more questions. Nivis moved closer to him, her exposed breasts moving up and down with each step. After observing him for a while, she spoke. You need to be at least 2 realms stronger to cross the ocean. To cross the sea without hindrance, you must be 3 or 4 realms higher than you are now. Alaric was flabbergasted. A mythical knight was a legendary figure in the surrounding nations, but in the eyes of the centaurus, they were nothing more than powerless bugs. Took him a long time to accept this information. It overturned his entire worldview. He realized that he had been a frog at the bottom of a well all this time, a tiny frog who was unaware of the greater world beyond his little well. For realms? There are that many realms beyond the mythical knight. Alaric mumbled in disbelief. 4. Nivis scoffed and shook her head with a disdainful expression. You humans really dared to call that realm mythical knight? She was amused. Alaric was embarrassed, but he had no way to retort. Nivis, you said that you were strong at your peak. Why did your strength regress to this level? He could only change the topic. The centaurus thought for a moment and replied. There was a battle. It was many races, killed. That war. Evil beings. They appeared. My people, my territory destroyed. Most of her words were censored by that unknown force again. But this time, he heard bits of pieces from her. A war between many races. What are the evil beings that she mentioned? Alaric was left with even more questions the more he tried to get answers. He asked another question, but Nivis suddenly grabbed her head and screamed in agony. The proud centaurus staggered, her face filled with alarm as she looked at Alaric's face. This man, why are there so many restrictions cast upon him? Is he connected with the ancients and those evil beings? Her mind was in turmoil and she couldn't calm down for a long time. Nivis! Nivis! Hey! Are you all right? Alaric's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Nivis wiped off the blood leaking out from her nose and replied indifferently. I'm fine. Alaric turned his head. He sensed a familiar aura approaching his location. My father is coming. Just act naturally and don't say anything unusual. When he turned his gaze back to the centaurus, he was stunned. She was no longer in her beast form. She turned into a blue-haired young woman with a pair of golden eyes. Her skin was pale white like that of the locals from a certain nation. She was unbothered despite being naked in front of him. Her peaks stood proudly and Alaric's eyes were glued to her pink nipples. Noticing the weird expression she was giving him, Alaric quickly pulled his eyes from her breast and faked a cough. We can't have you looking like that in front of my father. He removed his outer coat and draped it over her body. Wear this for now. I will find you better clothes later. Nivis had a disgusted look, but she still complied. Fine. Alaric looked troubled. This centaurus might be strong, but she lacked the common sense of a human. He was afraid that she might remove the coat and streak naked in front of the troops. Just thinking about it made his head hurt. Nivis, don't remove this coat. Never expose your naked body to anyone. If you do, other people would think of you as a lunatic. He reminded her with a stern look. Nivis looked annoyed at his constant nagging. She waved her hand and muttered in a displeased voice. I know. I know. Alaric could only sigh in resignation. Why did I have to summon someone like this? At this moment, a crisp whoosh echoed from above. Whoosh! Alaric, what happened here? I sensed you activating your domain. What was that strong aura from earlier? Lucas landed next to him after jumping from the branch of a towering tree. Alaric turned around and forced a smile. It's a long story, Dad. Just then, Lucas raised an eyebrow. The woman next to his son was emitting an unusual aura. He tried to gauge her power with strong perception, but he was left baffled. Strange. This woman. She has the same beastly aura as that little glutton, Dudu. Is she a half-beast? Who is this young lady? He asked while looking at his son with a dubious expression. While I was doing my mana training, I found her near this stream. She seems to have lost her memories, and she can only remember her name. She. Alaric fabricated a story. Lucas frowned. He found a half-beast so coincidentally after going out to train? Alaric, what are you? Never mind. We will talk once we get home. You'd better give me a proper explanation. He sent his son a deep look. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback. It looks like my fabricated story has a lot of loopholes. He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, Dad. I will tell you everything once we get home. It was about time to tell his family the truth. He couldn't keep it hidden forever. Lucas's eyes alternated between Alaric and Nivis. Whatever happened here, you will have to explain it to Ivana on your own. After saying those words, he turned around and left with a big leap. Whoosh! Nivis stared at Alaric and remarked with a smile. You have an understanding father. Alaric smiled at her words. Yes, I am lucky to have him as my father. Yeah, sure. But since when did I become a homeless person who lost her memories? Her gaze sharpened. Alaric chuckled awkwardly while scratching his head. That was the best excuse I could come up with. You'd better make this worthwhile for me. Lead the way. Nivis muttered. Alaric could only helplessly shake his head. Am I the master or are you the master? I can already imagine how tough the next days would be. Chapter 550 Nivis meets Savannah. Chapter 550 Nivis meets Savannah. Before returning to the camp, Alaric turned his head to the stream. He could sense that the beast that was hiding earlier was still there. Leave it be. Nivis's voice drifted into his ears. Alaric shrugged and went to get his horse. After climbing onto his horse, he approached Nivis and extended his hand to her. Sit behind me. She pushed his hand away and jumped onto the horse's back with one graceful move. Seeing this, Alaric squeezed his legs and urged the horse to move. Nivis was surprisingly silent along the way. He could sense her displeasure, but she kept quiet the entire time. Upon returning to the camp, Nivis's beautiful face immediately attracted everyone's attention. Whoa! Who is that young lady? She looks like a goddess. Is she a new servant of the Lord Venerable? Alaric was nervous when he heard the soldier's words. Don't mind them. They are just simple people. They mean you no harm. Nivis didn't respond, but her gaze was getting increasingly cold. Alaric could feel his back freezing from the aura she was subconsciously emitting. If he didn't have an affinity with the ice element, he would have already turned into an ice sculpture. A moment later, they stopped in front of a big tent where Ivana and two other ladies were waiting for him. Lord Venerable. Matilda and Celine greeted him respectfully. Ivana raised an eyebrow when she saw the woman sitting behind him. Who is she? Alaric jumped off his horse. I will explain inside. He forced a smile. Ivana frowned. She turned her head to Nivis and scrutinized her from head to foot. The first thing she noticed was that she was wearing Alaric's coat. Countless thoughts flashed in the elven princess's mind. Follow me. She sent Alaric a cold look. Alaric nodded and followed her inside the tent. Matilda and Celine were both amused to see this. The proud and youngest mythical knight in history obediently followed his wife to be like a little follower. Nivis glanced at the two women. Her gaze momentarily stopped on Matilda. What a disgusting aura. How can he keep a woman like this around? Without bothering to greet them, Nivis walked inside the tent, but a figure suddenly appeared to stop her. You are not allowed inside without the Lord Venerable's permission. Nivis stared at the warrior before her. It was a towering human warrior with muscular arms. He had long wavy black hair and an intimidating presence that would make anyone cower in fear. However, Nivis wasn't the least bit scared of him. Move! She stared straight into his eyes. Her calm gaze made Galliner feel unnerved. I apologize, but I cannot let you in without the Lord Venerable's approval. Galliner shook his head. Let her in. Alaric's voice drifted into their ears. Nivis' aura fluctuated all of a sudden, but she quickly retracted it when she heard Alaric's voice. Without saying a word, Galliner stepped away from the entrance. Nivis patted Galliner's shoulder. You are quite the loyal follower. Keep it up. Galliner raised an eyebrow, but he didn't say anything. He just watched her enter the tent with a thoughtful look. Her aura. She's not human. It was only for a brief moment, but he felt the beastly nature in her aura. It was something that humans didn't possess. So you're saying that you found her next to a stream while you were doing your mana training? Unlike Lucas, Ivana interrogated Alaric. She asked him numerous questions which he answered as best as he could. He made sure that his answers were the same to make it look natural. Ivana crossed her arms. You don't need to be wary of me, elven woman. I don't have a shred of interest in this human, not in the least bit. Nivis, who was silent the entire time, suddenly spoke in an annoyed voice. Ivana was about to retort when Nivis transformed into a creature that she had never seen before. You are not human. Ivana was filled with disbelief. That's right. I only decided to follow him since he looks a bit interesting. Nivis casually blurted a random excuse. Hearing this, Ivana's expression eased up. She then looked at Alaric and said, You should have told me from the start. About her. She didn't know what to call the centauress. Her name is Nivis. Alaric chuckled when he saw her awkward expression. Ivana could sense the strong aura coming from the centauress. Is she a catastrophe-grade beast? No, her aura is more powerful than Zephyr's. I apologize for the misunderstanding, Miss Nivis. In front of this powerful beast, Ivana lowered her proud head. Nivis transformed back into her human form. Keep this to yourself for now. It would be troublesome if others were to find out about me. Her kind was highly coveted, so she didn't want to show her true body in front of everyone. I understand. Ivana promised with a grim look. Nivis waved her hand indifferently. With that, the misunderstanding was finally resolved. Alaric was relieved and he immediately sent a grateful look to the centaurus. Ivana, please introduce Nivis to our people. She will be introduced as a transcendent knight of House Silversword. He didn't know why Nivis was hiding her true form, but he still followed along. All right, leave it to me. Ivana became surprisingly cooperative after she learned that Nivis was a beast. She convinced herself that Alaric wasn't physically attracted to the beast. Is it really necessary? Nivis raised an eyebrow. She found it troublesome. We have to. Alaric nodded. Your movements will be restricted if no one knows your identity, so from now on, you will be a transcendent knight of House Silversword, he explained. Nivis recalled her encounter with the muscular human from earlier and found it reasonable. Fine. She reluctantly agreed. Alaric sent Ivana a knowing look. The elven princess noticed his gaze and understood his intentions. Miss Nivis, please follow me. Chapter 551 Drinking Party in the Fortress of Ackland Pass. Chapter 551 Drinking Party in the Fortress of Ackland Pass. 7 days after summoning Nivis, the Estanian troops finally arrived at Ackland Pass. The mountains had already recovered from the last war, but vestiges of that major battle still existed. With a soft sigh, Alaric looked at the large craters now filled with greenery. Did a war take place here? Remarked Nivis, who was riding a horse next to him. With her acute perception, she noticed the traces of destruction that were covered by the grass and shrubs. Hearing this, Alaric nodded, recalling the scenes during that battle. Many of their comrades died at that time, including the warriors of House Silversword. This place is called Ackland Pass. Many of our soldiers died to defend this place from the Harunian troops. Seeing his forlorn expression, Nivis didn't ask more questions. She knew the devastating effects of war because she had experienced it too. As they marched deeper into the mountain ranges, they saw the newly repaired fortress that had been destroyed during the last battle. It was now double in size and they could see soldiers roaming around the mountains, checking for potential threats. At this moment, a team of warriors approached them. Dressed in their battle armor, they eyed Alaric's troops with hawk-like gazes. The man leading them was an elite knight, one who was on the verge of advancing to the next realm. He looked to be in his early 40s, with brown skin and a weathered face. They had already been informed that House Silversword's troops would return, but there were still necessary protocols to follow. He looked at the people leading the troops and found them incredibly familiar. Hold on. That hair. He squinted his eyes and thought for a moment. It's His Highness Alaric and Lord Lucas, he exclaimed. After confirming their identities, he no longer dawdled. He urged his horse to move faster and signaled to his men to do the same. Your Highness, my lord. Welcome back to Estania. He was filled with excitement as he greeted the father and son duo. He was just a low-ranking officer. He rarely encountered big shots like them, so he was eager to show his hospitality. Lucas smiled and nodded at the enthusiastic warrior, while Alaric greeted him back in response. It's good to be back. How is the situation here? He casually asked. It has been peaceful here, Your Highness. We have never been attacked ever since the last battle. I see. That's good to hear. Are you the one in charge now? The elite knight nodded humbly. Yes, Your Highness. I am quite lacking, but I will do my best to protect this place. The guy patted his chest with a resolute grin. Alaric smiled faintly. Keep it up. With the troops tired from the journey, Alaric and Lucas decided to take shelter in the fortress for the remainder of the day. The commander of the fortress didn't even hesitate and welcomed them with open arms. The warriors of House Silversword were respected by everyone in the fortress. They were even treated as heroes. It was especially true for Alaric, who was one of the key figures during the Battle of Ackland Pass. Later that evening, a drinking party was held in the fortress to welcome the return of House Silversword's troops. So you are revered as a hero here. Nivis sent Alaric a teasing look. Alaric shook his head. I don't deserve to be revered as a hero. I only did my job as the Prince of Estania. The ones who should be praised are the warriors who have unhesitatingly risked their lives to defend their country. In his past life, he was just a low-ranking military officer who commanded 100 warriors. He fought bravely during the Civil War, but he was never praised for his service. It was always the commanders who received the praises, while the bottom-ranking soldiers remained obscure and unknown. Nivis stared deeply at him. He was emanating a lonely aura that affected her mood. It was strange since he was just a young warrior who wasn't even in his 20s. How can he show such profound emotions at his age? You are one unreadable man, she remarked. Alaric merely chuckled in response. Suddenly, they saw a group of drunk warriors approaching them. The strong smell of alcohol wafted over and hit Nivis' nostrils, making her frown in disgust. I don't like this smell. You can stay here and enjoy yourself. I'll go get some fresh air. She turned around and left in a hurry. Alaric didn't stop her. Nivis was very particular about certain things. If she didn't like something, she would either complain or just leave. Your Highness, we heard from your troops that you are now a mythical knight. One of the drunk warriors exclaimed with a look of admiration. News of his breakthrough hadn't spread to Estania just yet, so many were still unaware that he was already a mythical knight. Alaric didn't deny it. He nodded to answer their curiosity. That's right. Whoa! Congratulations on your breakthrough. Your Highness. Oh no. It should be Lord Venerable. Congratulations, Lord Venerable. Alaric thanked them one by one. He chatted with them for a while before he excused himself. That night, the warriors of House Silversword had temporarily forgotten about the horrors and nightmares they experienced in Haroon. The fortress was filled with their laughter as they found new friends with whom they could share their stories. There was only one person who was unhappy that night, and she kept herself away from the rest. The next morning, the warriors of House Silversword exchanged farewell with their new friends. You are welcome here any time. I hope you have a pleasant journey. The commander of the fortress shouted as he watched them go down the mountain. Alaric waved his hand without turning back. I hope those men can be that happy forever. He lifted his head and looked at the blue sky, praying for the peace to continue. He turned his gaze back on the road, his eyes looking serene. Chapter 552. Let's go home now. Chapter 552. Let's go home now. A few weeks later in North Pinetown, the streets were already decorated with banners to welcome the return of Alaric and the others. A constant stream of visitors could be seen going in and out of the town. Most of them were from the neighboring cities who came here specifically to join the event. There were also merchants from various parts of the empire who came to sell their goods. The festive atmosphere spread all over the town. It could be seen from the joyful faces of the people that everyone was eager to see the return of their heroes. At this moment, Hershey was doing her random inspection on the busy streets. Her presence immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. That's Miss Hershey Paxley, the wife of His Highness Alaric. Just like the rumors say, she truly possesses a goddess-like beauty. The crowd curiously watched Hershey, who was surrounded by a group of stalwart warriors. With all the warriors around her, no one dared to get closer, afraid that they would unknowingly offend her security detail. You must make sure that all the goods being sold in the market are safe. We cannot allow any harm to befall our people. Do you understand? Hershey was surprisingly strict with the inspection process. Her careful scrutiny made the merchants feel a bit nervous. I assure you that all our goods are safe to consume, my lady. When our food is unsold, we usually give it away to the less fortunate. The merchant who was being questioned replied with a nervous smile. Hershey didn't buy his excuse. She had seen so many crooked merchants who tried to sell defective products. With a wave of her hand, she signaled to her subordinates. Check his goods. My lady, I think this is a bit. The merchant wiped off the sweat on his face as he watched the inspection team go through all his products. Hershey eyed him with an indifferent expression. This is part of the protocol. Please cooperate with us. If there are damages done during the inspection, we will reimburse immediately. Hearing this, the merchant could only comply with a forced smile. Feel free to inspect my goods, my lady. The merchants who were about to sell their defective items immediately fled the scene, but the warriors of House Silversword quickly apprehended them. The people who saw this all happen could only exclaim at the tight security. With this kind of security, everyone felt a lot safer. Some even considered becoming a permanent resident of the town when they saw how serious House Silversword was about the safety of North Pinetown. Suddenly, the sound of bells ringing echoed across the town. The residents were shocked, but they soon realized what this sound meant. They are here. His Lordship and His Highness are back with the troops. The brave warriors have returned. The messengers stationed at the walls spread the news, and their voices soon reached the ears of Hershey, who was in the middle of an inspection. He is here. Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't even bother to conceal her emotions as she rushed out of the store. I will leave the rest to you guys. I must go. Hershey entered her carriage and instructed the coachman to head straight to the town entrance. Hershey's security detail quickly jumped on their horses and followed her carriage. Alaric. Hershey clutched her clothes, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Cassandra, how do I look? She asked while looking at her trusty subordinate. It was Cassandra, the red-haired female warrior. Author's note. In case you don't remember her, check chapter 41 for reference. Cassandra smiled at her and replied, You look beautiful as always, my lady. Hershey chuckled at her words. You are getting better at flattering people, Cassandra. Cassandra smiled and shook her head. I'm only stating the truth. A quarter of an hour later, they arrived at the town entrance where a large group of people had already gathered. Hershey's security team quickly shouted at the crowd to vacate the road. When the people saw House Silversword's emblem on the carriage, they quickly made way for them. Hershey stuck her head out of the carriage window and asked a member of her security team, "Lyanna, where are they?" Lyanna pulled the reins of her horse and turned to look at Hershey. "My lady, I can already see them. They should be here in another 10 minutes. Hearing this, Hershey stepped out of her carriage. "My lady, it's hot out there." Cassandra quickly grabbed a paper umbrella to shield Hershey from the sun. The high temperature didn't stop Hershey. She looked eagerly in the distance, hoping to see that familiar figure. "Can you see him, Cassandra?" she asked. Cassandra sighed as she looked at her love-struck lady, but she still looked in the distance to search for Alaric's figure. A moment later, she finally caught sight of Alaric. She was already an elite knight, so her vision was stronger than the average person. "I see His Highness, my lady. He is there." She pointed in a certain direction. Hershey followed the direction she was pointing. She squinted her eyes and vaguely saw Alaric's striking hair, fluttering with the wind. "It's him. He's back," she exclaimed with joy. Her security team also smiled. Soon, Alaric, Lucas, and the rest of the troops stopped in front of the town entrance, under the sparkling gazes of the onlookers. Alaric jumped off his horse and rushed to embrace his wife. Feeling her soft skin, he hugged her tightly. "I'm back. Yes, I'm glad that you're safe." Tears rolled down Hershey's face as she looked at his sweat-covered handsome face. "I missed you so much." Alaric smiled and gave her a passionate kiss. The crowd cheered at the couple, sharing the joy of their reunion. After a minute, the two finally separated, looking at each other with deep love and affection. Beaming, Alaric grabbed her hand and said, "Let's go home now." Chapter 553 This is my second life. Chapter 553 This is my second life. The whole town celebrated the return of the heroes. Many distinguished people also attended the event, hoping to meet with the famous warriors of House Silversword. While the whole town was celebrating, Alaric was having lunch with his family. Ivana and Hershey were also at the dinner table. Elena was invited to join the meal, but the girl sensibly refused. "Can you tell us who this young lady is?" Maria asked her son as she looked at the blue-haired woman seated next to Ivana. Everyone was curious about her identity. They perked their ears, waiting for Alaric's response. Looking at their curious faces, Alaric didn't answer right away. He looked at Nivis to seek her confirmation. The centaurus was hiding her identity, so it wouldn't be appropriate if he were to reveal it to his family. Nivis furrowed her eyebrows, but she still nodded reluctantly. After getting her approval, Alaric opened his mouth. "This is Nivis. She is a centaurus. She only transformed into her human form." Everyone was shocked to hear this. They couldn't believe that such a beautiful woman was actually a monster. "Let's just keep her identity a secret. A beast that can transform into a human is rare, and she might be hunted if others were to learn about her situation." Alaric warned them with a stern look. "You can be at ease, Nivis. We will keep your identity a secret." Jade Christine smiled at the centaurus. Nivis didn't say anything and just nodded her head. They talked about random matters afterwards to lighten the mood. After the meal, Lucas summoned Alaric to his study. "So it has come to this. How much should I tell them?" Alaric thought as he walked to his father's study. His story was one that others would find to be unbelievable and even close to being absurd. Immersed in his thoughts, Alaric unknowingly arrived at his father's study. "Knock, knock. It's me," he announced his arrival. "Come in." Lucas's voice sounded inside the room. Hearing this, Alaric pushed the door open. Creak. Upon stepping inside the room, he saw Lucas seated behind his desk, while his two mothers were seated on adjacent chairs. "What is going on? Why did you call us here?" Maria looked at her husband with a frown. She could sense that something was wrong with Lucas's expression. Jade Christine was also filled with doubts, but she kept her silence. Lucas beckoned to Alaric and motioned for him to sit. "Now tell us what you've been hiding from us." Alaric's expression became serene as he recalled the events in his first life. He took his seat and took a deep breath before he spoke. "I have reincarnated after dying in my first life." Lucas frowned, while his mothers covered their mouths in disbelief. Their first thought was that he was lying, but they couldn't sense an ounce of lie in his words. Alaric's eyes also remained calm as he uttered those words. Looking at his parents' shocked faces, Alaric continued. "In my past life, Dad died after being poisoned by Uncle. That bastard. Charles took over Dad's position and assumed the role of a family head." He turned his gaze to Maria and said, "Mom later died out of depression. That demon, Charles Silversword, defiled Elena, which forced her to commit suicide." At this point, his voice had become cold, his anger palpable. "After I learned the truth, I killed him. I killed him with my own hands." I felt no joy after killing him because I was already left alone. Several years later, my cousin, Prince Giovanni. I joined the Crown Prince's army and served as a low-ranking military officer. During a major war between the prince's armies, I was killed in battle and returned to my younger self. He looked at his parents and said, "This is my second life." Maria covered her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. Jade Christine sighed emotionally. She walked towards him and gave him a tight embrace. "It must have been hard on you, my son." They couldn't even begin to imagine the pain he had gone through. Having witnessed the deaths of his loved ones, Alaric must have been filled with remorse and regret. If they were in his shoes, they didn't even know how they would continue living. Lucas let out a sigh and shook his head. "No wonder you suddenly started training like crazy. I finally understand why you were so suspicious of your uncle the whole time. It turns out that you already knew the evil things he would do. You were always ahead of every important event like you knew what was going to happen. Now it all makes sense." Lucas leaned on his seat and rubbed his eyes. Alaric didn't realize that tears had fallen from his eyes. "I don't want to repeat the tragedies of my past life, so I trained relentlessly and made sure that those tragic events wouldn't happen again." He had kept everything bottled up. The loneliness and all the negative emotions he had carried all this time were poured out. He wiped off his tears with his palm and let out a deep breath. "I still don't know how I reincarnated, but I'm glad to receive this chance to redo everything. I'm happy now that we are all together again." He smiled faintly. His parents offered him words of consolation. They gave him a hug. Even Lucas joined them and embraced him tightly. "You managed to overcome all that pain. I'm proud of you, son." Lucas patted his son's shoulder. Alaric forced a smile. Truthfully, he still hadn't overcome the pain from his past life. There were times when he would dream about those tragedies. The nightmares haunted him for years and they had never disappeared. "Thank you for telling us about your experience, son." Maria stroked Alaric's head. She was filled with sadness for what he had to go through. "If you need someone to talk to, you can find us anytime. We will always be there for you, son," Jade Christine added. He could feel their concern, which made him feel a wave of comfort. "I will." Chapter 554 Going to the Town. Chapter 554 Going to the Town. "Son, how far into the future have you seen?" Lucas asked. Alaric's knowledge of the future would be beneficial for the household. He could stop certain tragedies from occurring and he could also prepare for what was to come. With a deep sigh, Alaric replied, "I have lived for over 30 years in my past life, but I only remember the significant events. The rest are fragmented in my memories." "I know what you are thinking, Dad." He looked at Lucas and shook his head. "I don't want to rely too much on my knowledge of the future. Things are already going differently from what I remember. I don't even know what would happen next." "I see." Lucas nodded, deep in thought. "Son, you should go out and enjoy the festivities. You can bring your baby sister with you. She needs a little exposure to sunlight so she can grow into a healthy young lady." Maria gave him an excuse to leave. She was afraid that her husband might ask another careless question that would awaken Alaric's painful memories. "Listen to your mom, son. Dudu has been looking for you everywhere, so you should bring her too." Jade Christine chimed in. Hearing this, Alaric smiled and nodded. "All right, I will bring them around the town." He stood up, bid his parents farewell and left. After he left, the three adults fell into silence, and a gloomy atmosphere hung over the room. Upon stepping out of his father's study, he felt as if a lump in his throat had been removed. Alaric let out a sigh while shaking his head. "I feel much better," he mumbled. He had been waiting for the right moment to tell his parents about his past life, but he couldn't find the right timing. As for the system, he decided to keep it to himself. Alaric went to the nursing room to get his baby sister. When he arrived at the room, he found Dudu and a group of maidservants playing with his baby sister. "Your Highness." The servants bowed their heads. "Uncle." Dudu, the little girl, rushed toward. Alaric rubbed her head and chuckled. "Have you been a good girl?" Dudu touched her chin and nodded. "Yes." The maidservants revealed awkward smiles at her response. They had seen how unruly the little glutton was, but they didn't snitch on her. Alaric noticed this, but he pretended to be oblivious. "Good job. As the older sister, you must set a good example for Gwenaëlle." He squeezed the little girl's face. "Okay." Dudu didn't seem to understand, but she still nodded with a thumbs up. Alaric put her down and said, "Let's go to the town and join the fun." Hearing this, Dudu's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Yay!" Alaric took his baby sister from a maid. "You guys can rest here. I will take care of my sister." The maidservants hesitated, but they still complied. "We obey your commands. Get all my sister's things ready. We will leave in 30 minutes. I will wait at the main hall." After giving this instruction, Alaric left the nursing room with Dudu and his baby sister. In the main hall he saw Ivana, Hershey, Nivis, and Elena. They were in the middle of a conversation, but they stopped when they noticed him approaching. "We were just talking about going to the town to take a look at the festivities. How about joining us?" Hershey asked as she beckoned to him to sit next to her. Alaric took his seat and replied with a smile. "I was just thinking of bringing Gwenaëlle and Dudu to see the fun things in the town." "That's great. Then we should go together," Hershey exclaimed. Beaming, Alaric nodded. "All right, but we will have to wait for Gwenaëlle's items before we leave." "Of course. Then I will go and inform someone to prepare the carriage," Elena volunteered. Nivis was about to decline when she sensed the unusual aura that Dudu was emitting. Strange. That brat. Why does she have the aura of a dragon? She was bewildered. Is she a byproduct of a human and a dragon? A thought crossed her mind and it filled her with interest. "Are you going with us, Nivis?" Alaric's voice drifted into her ears, interrupting her thoughts. She looked at him and reluctantly nodded. "Fine." Alaric was surprised. He was just casually asking. He didn't expect her to agree. "Then I will call Matilda and Celine. We might need someone to take care of Gwenaëlle later." Ivana stood up and left. 30 minutes later, the group gathered outside the mansion. Their carriage was already there to pick them up, and it was Henry who acted as the coachman. A security team led by Galliner was also waiting for them. Seeing that everything was in place, Alaric stepped forward and said, "Let's go." They entered the carriage and soon left the estate. "Where are we headed, Your Highness?" Henry's voice echoed. Alaric thought for a moment before he replied, "Take us to the orphanage." His mother, Maria, built an orphanage in the town to help the orphan children find a new home. It was a project with no expected profit. The establishment was built solely to help the children who lost their parents or those who were unfortunately abandoned. "Right away, Your Highness. We shouldn't go there empty-handed. How about we buy some gifts for the children before heading there?" the thoughtful Hershey suggested. Hearing this, Alaric agreed. "All right. Henry, bring us to the market first." "Yes, Your Highness." The streets of the town were filled with tourists. The group eagerly watched the bustling streets. Soon, they arrived in front of a big store where a large group of shoppers had gathered. There was a long queue at the entrance which showed how busy the store was. Their carriage immediately attracted attention, and everyone was stunned when they saw the familiar insignia of House Silversword. "It's someone from House Silversword." Chapter 555, Giving Gifts to the Children at the Orphanage. Chapter 555, Giving Gifts to the Children at the Orphanage. Henry jumped off from the coachman's seat and went to open the carriage door. The first one to step out of the carriage was Alaric, who was holding his baby sister. Dudu closely followed behind him, holding onto his pants, unwilling to let go. The ladies then stepped out one by one. "That's His Highness. His Highness is here. Greetings, Your Highness." The people stared at him, bowing their heads with utmost respect. Alaric smiled at the crowd, nodding his head occasionally in response. "Your Highness, you can go in first." The store owner, a chubby middle-aged lady, invited him inside. Alaric accepted her offer. If he had to queue up with the rest of the people, he would have to wait for some time before he could go in. They followed the store owner inside. "What should we buy for the children?" Alaric turned his head to Hershey. She was more familiar with these matters since she usually did this with Maria. "We need to buy them new clothes to prepare for the next season. We must get enough for all the children." She thought for a moment before she added, "We can also buy them some toys and books so they can keep themselves entertained." Alaric didn't have any objections. "You heard her. Get all those things for us," Alaric instructed the store owner. "Yes, Your Highness. I will get them ready right away." The store owner was eager to help them. Knowing that the items were for the children, she felt even more respect for House Silversword. She felt lucky to be under their jurisdiction. If it were any other lord, they wouldn't even care about the lives of their residents. Dozens of clothes were packed into several wooden boxes. The toys and other items were placed in separate boxes. They were sorted neatly so it wouldn't be difficult to distribute them. More than 10 servants helped in packaging everything, including the store owner herself. With everyone's efforts, all the items had been packaged in just less than an hour. "Thank you for the help, everyone. I added a little extra to the payment. The store owner will distribute your share later." Alaric handed a pouch filled with coins to the store owner. "You can rest assured, Your Highness. I will only take the payment. The rest will be equally distributed to the servants," the store owner promised with a solemn look. Alaric smiled faintly and nodded his head. "All right, I believe you." The generous rewards made the servants cheer. They volunteered to help them carry the packages to the hired carriage, which saved Alaric's subordinates quite the effort. After everything was in place, they didn't linger for long and left the place. Inside the carriage, Hershey beamed at Alaric. "I'm sure the kids will love the gifts we prepared for them." "They sure will," Alaric agreed with a chuckle. 15 minutes later, they arrived in front of a newly constructed 3-story building. In front of the establishment was a garden where numerous kinds of vegetables were planted. The children planted those vegetables with the help of the orphanage director and the caregivers, Hershey explained when they passed by the garden. Alaric rubbed his chin and remarked, "The orphanage in Vale also did the same thing, but they did it out of necessity." William and his wife opened that orphanage to take care of the abandoned children in Vale, but they received no support from the government and the aristocrats, so they were forced to be self-sufficient. They planted their own crops and raised different kinds of farm animals just so the children would have something to eat. Alaric sighed when he recalled that day. "You're right. We followed the same strategy done by the orphanage in Vale." Hershey smiled. "Although our orphanage here doesn't lack funding, the orphanage director wanted the children to be independent and disciplined, so he taught them how to raise livestock and plant simple crops." Alaric admired the orphanage director's dedication to raising the children. "He sounds like a very compassionate man. I would love to meet him." He was curious to know who was appointed as the orphanage director. Was it someone he knew or was it a stranger? As the group walked towards the establishment, they saw a group of children coming out of the building. "Sister Hershey, Sister Elena." The children recognized Hershey and Elena since they were frequent visitors. They excitedly rushed towards their group, giggling. "Don't be rude to our guests, kids." A stern voice suddenly drifted over. Hearing this voice, the children obediently stopped in their tracks. Alaric looked at the person who had stepped out of the orphanage. It was a healthy-looking old man with short gray hair. He looked like a random neighborhood old man, but Alaric could sense a faint trace of mana from him. Alaric quickly used his appraisal and discovered that the old man was a knight. He wasn't particularly strong, but he was definitely a knight. Where did Mom find someone like him? He wondered as he observed the old man from head to foot. "Greetings, Your Highness. I hope you don't mind the children's behavior. They are always like this every time they see Miss Hershey and Miss Elena." The old man lowered his head. Alaric quickly helped him. "It's just a small matter. It's nothing to fuss about. Let's talk inside." The old man invited them to the building. Alaric was planning to chat with him, so he followed the old director. The old man brought them to his office on the ground floor. Upon taking their seats, Alaric didn't waste any time and stated the reason for their visit. "We came here to deliver the gifts we prepared for the children. I hope you can distribute those items to the kids, Director." The old director saw the warriors unloading several boxes from a carriage, so he seemed to have expected this. "I'm grateful for your kindness, Your Highness. I hope you will receive more blessings from Aru." Alaric chatted with the director while the ladies occasionally joined in. They discussed the future of the orphanage, which almost made the old director cry in gratitude. A few hours later, the group left the orphanage with a mixture of emotions. "I hope someone will come to adopt those kids," Matilda sighed while shaking her head. The others shared the same sentiments. "Where are we going next?" Ivana asked. Everyone turned their gazes to Alaric. Sensing their gazes, Alaric thought for a moment. "It's about to turn dark, so we should go somewhere less crowded. I know a place." He smiled. "Sir Henry, please bring us to the church," he instructed. "Right away, Your Highness." North Pinetown didn't have its own church for a long time, but House Silversword had already addressed this issue recently. The church was located in the outer corner of the town, near the newly built residential complex. It's still new, so the church didn't have many visitors. Moreover, there was a severe lack of priests, so sermons and masses were rarely held. "Why bring us there? That sounds like a boring place." Nivis raised an eyebrow. The other ladies stared at her with unusual gazes, but Nivis ignored them and kept her eyes on Alaric. "Nivis, do your people believe in God?" Alaric looked at the centauress with a faint smile. Nivis furrowed at the sudden question, but she still nodded. "Of course. We believe in the great goddess of the sea, Iquor." Iquor? Alaric vaguely remembered the name. She was said to be the controller of the entire seas. Many fisherfolk and coastal residents believed in her. To some, she was their religion. "We too have someone we revere. Almost everyone in Estania believes in the benevolent god, Aru. We follow the words of Aru and we share the words of Aru. I will share with you the teachings we learned from Aru." "I am not interested. I only believe in Iquor." Nivis shook her head. "You don't need to believe in Aru. You can just listen to Aru's teachings." Alaric didn't give up. "You sure are persistent." "Fine, but don't get your hopes up. My belief will never waver." Nivis scoffed. Alaric didn't bother to argue with her. He just changed the topic and began to engage the other ladies in another conversation. Suddenly, their carriage abruptly stopped. Alaric frowned and asked, "What happened, Sir Henry?" "Your Highness, someone is blocking the road," Henry replied in a hesitant voice. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback. Who would even dare to block House Silversword's carriage in their own territory? Curious, he handed his baby sister to Matilda and stepped out of the carriage. To his surprise, the ones blocking the road were members of House Paxley, and the man leading them was his father-in-law, Nathan Paxley. "Ha ha ha! How have you been, Your Highness? I came here as soon as I heard that you guys are back." Chapter 556 Joshua, the Clergy. Chapter 556 Joshua, the Clergy. Hearing this annoying voice, Alaric could already tell who it belonged to. He turned and saw Nathan coming out of the carriage blocking their path. "Dad!" Hershey smiled when she saw her father, but there was a hint of embarrassment in her eyes. "My lord!" Alaric awkwardly greeted his father-in-law. Nathan beamed and walked towards the couple. "Did I disturb your stroll?" he asked with a chuckle. Alaric shook his head. "Not at all, my lord." Nathan pretended to be angry and reminded him, "We are family now. You should call me father-in-law. You can also call me dad if you want." Hearing her father's words, Hershey could only helplessly shake her head. "Dad!" Meanwhile, Alaric just laughed it off and went along with him. "All right, father-in-law. That's better." Nathan grinned. "By the way, where are you headed to?" he asked, looking curiously at the people who had gotten out of the carriage. His eyes unknowingly stopped on Matilda and Nivis. He was already familiar with the first woman since he had seen her following Alaric around, but the blue-haired woman was a new face. "My beloved daughter, you have another competitor here. I wish you luck." He quickly pulled his eyes from them so he wouldn't be labeled as a pervert. Smiling, Alaric turned his head to Hershey as he replied, "We are all headed to see the newly built church in the town." "That's perfect. I'm actually thinking of praying to Aru, so why don't we go there together?" Nathan wanted to shamelessly tag along to further deepen his relationship with his son-in-law. He had been bragging a lot to his friends about his close relationship with Alaric, so he had to make it look like that. "No problem, but you might not fit in our carriage." Alaric agreed. Bringing his father-in-law along wasn't an issue, so he readily agreed. "Splendid. Don't worry about me. I will follow you guys on my carriage." Nathan didn't seem to mind. "All right, then we should go since we are blocking the road," Alaric said while pointing at the long queue of carriages behind them. Nathan bashfully chuckled. "Oh my! We should go then." He knew that he caused this heavy traffic, so he quickly returned to his carriage. Seeing this, Alaric pulled Hershey's hand and they entered the carriage together. Somewhere in the residential district of the town, a church could be seen at the very center, looking very conspicuous with its unique architecture. The sacred statue of the benevolent god, Aru, was placed in front of the church. The sacred image was sculpted in a way that would make others think that Aru was guiding them inside the church. Alaric's group later arrived in front of the church. They gave the statue a solemn bow to express their veneration to the benevolent god. Nivis observed the statue with an eyebrow raised upwards, looking like she was judging it. "That's Aru," she mumbled to herself, unimpressed. A clergy and a group of clergy in training stepped out of the church to greet them. "Your Highness, my lords, my ladies. How have you been, Father Joshua?" Alaric cupped his fists at the middle-aged clergyman. Joshua was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his late 40s. He had a gentle face and a pair of eyes that glowed radiantly like the sun. "I have been well, Your Highness. Thank you for asking." Joshua responded with a chuckle. "I heard that Your Highness has recently advanced. Should I call you Lord Venerable instead?" he inquired with an unchanging smile. Nathan, who was walking alongside them, was stunned when he heard this. "Alaric has advanced?" He was filled with disbelief. It hasn't been long since his son-in-law became a transcendent knight. Alaric smiled faintly. He wasn't surprised that the church was already aware of his advancement. Their network was spread all over the surrounding empires. They were usually the first ones to hear about significant events. "Whatever suits you, Father Joshua," Alaric calmly replied. "Then we will call you Lord Venerable from now on. How about we continue our conversation inside?" Joshua invited them. Alaric nodded. Joshua led the way. Alaric's group followed him while the group of clergy in training lagged slightly behind. There were murals of significant religious events on the walls. There were also religious artifacts placed inside glass walls. Alaric's group respectfully observed the murals and the artifacts. Seeing Nivis's disinterested expression, Alaric explained the stories behind them. Although he wasn't the most religious person, Alaric was still familiar with the history behind the murals and the artifacts. Occasionally, Joshua would fill in the gaps that Alaric had forgotten to mention. A moment later, the group arrived at the praying hall where they were told to do their individual prayers. After they offered their prayers, Joshua gave them a tour around the church. At this moment, they suddenly heard a series of hurried footsteps behind them. "Father! Father! Bad news!" A young man in his 20s came running towards Joshua, which earned him a stern look from the latter. "You shouldn't be running around in this sacred hall. Tell me what happened." Joshua reminded him with a frown. The young man apologized before he conveyed what he came here for. "Father, the bishop, Bishop Amari Anton, has been killed." Joshua's eyes widened upon hearing this. The bishop was killed? His voice was filled with disbelief. The bishop was one of the most respected individuals in the church. He was a kind man. He was also Joshua's mentor. Alaric and the others were also stunned by the news. Bishop Amari Anton was a three-ringed beast soulmaster. Although he was already old, he wouldn't easily be defeated in a fight. The young man nodded, his eyes looking grim. "Yes, I heard that he was murdered on his way back from Veronica." "How is that possible? Why would someone kill His Excellency?" Joshua staggered and nearly collapsed on the floor, but Alaric quickly caught him. Chapter 557 Heretic Group? Chapter 557 Heretic Group? While holding on to Joshua, Alaric asked the young messenger in a cold voice. "Who did it? Who killed His Excellency?" Amari Anton was the one who officiated his wedding. They weren't exactly close, but Alaric greatly respected the bishop. The young messenger looked at him and was shocked when he recognized his identity. "Your Highness!" Seeing Alaric's grave expression, the young man quickly calmed down and gathered his thoughts. "I don't know the specifics, but from what I have been told, it was done by a group of heretics. I heard that His Excellency died from a powerful curse." "A curse?" Alaric suddenly recalled Liam. Liam also died from a curse-type ability. Alaric frowned. He had a feeling that it was done by the same group of people. "I think I have an idea of who the culprits are, but I need to inform my father about this." He looked at the devastated clergy and said, "Father Joshua, I will head home first. If you get any news about this matter, please send someone to inform me. House Silversword will help the church with the investigation." Joshua nodded despondently. "Thank you, Lord Venerable. I will keep you updated." Alaric's group didn't linger at the church. They stepped out of the sacred space and entered the carriage. All of them had gloomy faces except Nivis. "Alaric!" Hershey grabbed his hand with a forlorn expression. Alaric squeezed her hand. "Everything will be fine. Trust me. Amen." Suddenly, a notification popped up in front of him. "Mission, find the culprit. Mission difficulty, normal." Bishop Amari Anton spread the teachings of Aru in Veronica, but a group of heretics were offended by his actions. On his way back to Estania, the bishop's entourage was attacked. The bishop and all his guards were killed. Find the culprit and make them pay for their crimes. Rewards: 500 battle points, 15 EXP, 5 stat points. Penalty for failure: your good relationship with the church will decline. Alaric took a deep breath and closed the system screen. Even without the mission, he wouldn't rest until he found the culprits behind the bishop's death. Upon returning home, Alaric headed straight to his father's study to inform him about the news. "What? Have you confirmed the news?" Lucas was shocked. Alaric shook his head. "No, but it should be reliable since I heard it from someone in the church." Lucas rubbed his temples. "They just got home from Haroun, but another problem had come up." "What do you want to do?" He looked at his son. He could tell from Alaric's face that he was thinking of getting involved. With a cold look, Alaric replied, "His Excellency officiated my wedding. I cannot let the culprits get away without consequences. They must be punished." His aura fluctuated as he muttered those words. Lucas stared deeply at him and nodded. "All right, you have my support, but we must keep this news to ourselves. We cannot let the public know about this without the church's approval." "I know." Alaric understood his father's worries. If news about the bishop's passing were to spread to the public, it would definitely cause a wave of panic. "Then we should visit Veronica and discuss this issue with their empress," Lucas suggested. "This happened in her territory, so it's only right to get her involved," he added. Alaric nodded in agreement. He had the same thoughts as his father. Getting the empress involved would make the investigations easier. The relationship between Estania and Veronica became strained after the war with Haroun. If the empress refused to cooperate, it would only intensify the tension between the two nations. "I will arrange a meeting with their empress. You can go there once we get her confirmation." It would be rude to visit the empress without an appointment, so they had to set up the meeting to avoid misunderstandings. "I will wait." Alaric lowered his head and left. After he left, Lucas stood up from his seat and walked to the window with a deep sigh. "When can I even get some rest?" he mumbled helplessly. The death of the bishop weighed heavily on Alaric's mind, but he didn't let this affect his mood. He made sure that he would interact with his family and friends. He also didn't skip his training to maintain his discipline. This went on for the next 7 days. A week later, Alaric had just completed his daily mission. He was drenched in sweat. He opened the system screen to check his recent progress. Alaric Silversword, Mythical Knight, EXP. 5. 255/10,000. Potential, SSS. Traits, Swordsmanship, L. Ruthless Slaughterer, SS. Shield Mastery, SS. Supreme Regeneration, S. Horseback Riding, A. Close Combat, A. Sixth Sense, A. Appraisals, B. Hunting, C. Tracking, C. Monster Affinity, C. Mana Gathering, C. Archery, D. Strength, 1,100. Stamina, 1,100. Agility, 1,100. Vitality, 1,100. Endurance, 1,100. Mana, 1,100. Battle points, 50. 2550. Stat points, 3. 153. Requirements for the next advancement, 10,000 EXP, 1,500 in all attributes, and 100,000 battle points. He decided to keep his stat points for later use. I will allocate them if necessary. With current stats, he was almost invincible, so he didn't find it urgent to distribute the stat points he had collected. At this moment he saw Aldrin running towards him. Lord Venerable. Aldrin stopped in front of him and said, "His lordship is waiting for you in his study." Hearing this, Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. Did we finally receive a confirmation from Veronica's side? Thinking about this, he nodded. All right, I will be there shortly. Alaric took off his training gear. He then wiped off his sweat before he entered the mansion. When he arrived at his father's office, he saw that Sherwin and Bastian were there. The two greeted him respectfully, while Lucas motioned for him to sit. The Empress has given her approval. Lucas spoke as soon as Alaric had taken his seat. When do I leave? Alaric asked. As soon as possible, Lucas replied. The Empress seemed to be furious when she heard the news. From the looks of it, this heretic group is also a nuisance on her side. He added, Chapter 558 Nivis learned bad habits from Matilda. Chapter 558 Nivis learned bad habits from Matilda. Alaric didn't waste any time. He assembled the strongest warriors of House Silversword, a total of 10 transcendent knights. Galaner, Sekus, Scylla, Azazel, Butch, Einar, Fredrin, Warwick, William, and Nivis, who was in her human form. Looking at the 10 warriors, Alaric recalled when House Silversword had only a small number of elites. At that time, he couldn't even summon 10 knights at once. Alaric sighed as he thought of this. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and spoke in a serious voice. We will be heading to Veronica to look for the people who killed the bishop. I know we just got home from Haroun, but we cannot let those people get away. Alaric looked calm on the surface, but the 10 transcendents could feel his rage. In the next moment, Alaric made a whistling sound. Roar! Zephyr appeared in the sky and descended before them with a whoosh. Alaric jumped onto the draconic lion's back and said, Hop on. We are leaving now. Hearing this, the 10 transcendents jumped onto Zephyr's back one by one. Before they left, Alaric looked at the group of people gathered in front of the mansion to send them off. His parents were there, so were his wife and the others. He sent them a deep look. No words were spoken, but they understood the message in his eyes. It was a quiet farewell. Alaric looked away from them and whispered, Let's go, Zephyr. The draconic lion responded with a mighty roar. Roar! It ran a couple of meters to gain momentum before it jumped and flew into the sky. Why didn't you bring the elven woman or any of those maidservants of yours? You might get bored on this trip. Nivis stood next to him, her blue hair fluttering wildly against the wind. Alaric shook his head and replied, I don't know what kind of enemies we would have to face there. Even a 3-ringed beast soul master like the bishop was killed. I can't let them go somewhere so dangerous. Nivis moved closer to him. He could smell her tantalizing jasmine-like scent. It was irresistible. She leaned forward, exposing her tempting cleavage, and whispered in a seductive voice, If you want, I can make you feel good. Her warm, fragrant breath touched his skin, making Alaric feel a certain urge. However, he stopped himself from having unhealthy thoughts because he knew that Nivis was just teasing him. He gently pushed her shoulder and distanced himself from her. He then stared into her eyes and muttered, Stop pushing your luck. Nivis shrugged. She faked a disappointed look while clicking her tongue. TSK. TSK. This centaurus has been learning bad things from Matilda. From time to time, Alaric would have to face her temptations. She was wearing a tight-fitting leather armor that only covered the vulnerable parts of her body. Her slender arms and long legs were exposed. Why did you choose to wear something like that? You could have worn something more comfortable, he remarked after taking a few glimpses of her exposed skin. Nivis noticed his eyes roaming all over her body, but she didn't seem to mind it. She let out a smile and said, I heard from Matilda that you like to see her wear these kinds of clothes. I thought it would be fun, so I borrowed some from her. Alaric awkwardly coughed upon hearing this. Did she really tell you that? You shouldn't carelessly listen to her advice. You should learn more from Hershey and Ivana instead. Nivis scoffed. Why would I learn from them? I don't want to offend you, but all they talk about is art, dancing, and other boring things. She sounded displeased at the idea of learning the things she mentioned. I should punish Matilda next time. The journey wasn't boring with Nivis there to entertain him. She had become more talkative, and she would even occasionally say provocative words to tempt him. She was very distant and even cold to him when they first met, but she had become a completely different version of herself after they had gotten closer. It wasn't a bad thing for Alaric, but he had to endure her occasional teasing and temptation. A few hours into the flight, they left the borders of Estania. They later encountered a large flock of monster birds, but they were scared away by Zephyr's overwhelming aura. Several hours later, they finally saw traces of human activity. They saw hunters and caravans traveling through the dense forests. They also discovered small villages hidden in various corners. Why do some people choose to live in dangerous places like this? Nivis suddenly asked as they flew over a small village with 20 to 30 mud houses. Because they don't want to face oppression. Alaric calmly replied. Oppression? From who? Nivis raised an eyebrow. With a sigh, Alaric responded. Commoners like them always have to face the oppression of aristocratic families. These noble houses impose higher taxes and force their people to work under harsh living conditions. Those who couldn't endure the oppression would choose to leave their country and live in secluded areas like this. Although it's dangerous, they are free. He added. Nivis sneered. That's the problem with you humans. You torment your own people and wage wars against each other. If you guys could just unite under one banner, no race would dare to stand against you. Alaric wasn't offended by her words because it was all true, but there was something that made him curious. Were there humans from where you live? Nivis nodded. Of course, but the humans there are more resilient compared to the people here. They can survive in harsh environments with limited resources. The only problem is that they are not united. Alaric found it interesting. From her descriptions, the continent she lived in was winter all year round. The inhabitants would have to face harsh snowstorms and freezing temperatures. Alaric couldn't imagine how humans could live under such conditions. Chapter 559 Gilson and Commander Shin Dolsuk. Chapter 559 Gilson and Commander Shin Dolsuk. Unknowingly, they were already close to Gilson, a fortress city in the outermost corner of Veronica. They could already see the tall earthen walls of the fortress city. We will have to move on foot from here, Alaric told the group. If they flew straight over the fortress city, they might fire their artillery weapons at them. Zephyr, let's go down. Roar! The draconic lion descended into the ground. Whoosh! Alaric and the 10 transcendents jumped off its back as soon as they landed. The city's soldiers should be here soon. We still need their help to get a flying permit, so just lay low for now. Alaric reminded everyone in a stern voice. Yes, Lord Venerable. There were usually strict regulations on flying beasts, not to mention a catastrophe-grade beast like Zephyr. Veronica was famous for their strict security measures, but it was because of this that its citizens could live without fear. The group walked along the dirt road, fully alert. A moment later, Alaric sensed the presence of a small group approaching them. They really brought 50 warriors just to meet us. From his observation, there was only one transcendent knight among the approaching soldiers. The rest were mostly knights and knight apprentices. There were a few elite knights, but they weren't a threat to them. They heard the sound of horses coming towards them, but Alaric's group remained calm. State your origin. A stern voice drifted into their ears as a group of 50 soldiers came into their view. Leading them was a handsome, middle-aged man with a horizontal sword scar on his nose. He had the features of a Veronican man. He had double eyelids and skin so flawlessly white. He didn't look like a warrior at first glance. He looked more like a feeble scholar, but Alaric knew that this guy was a transcendent knight. Alaric used his appraisal and was a bit impressed. His strength is quite lacking, but his other attributes are above average. He has some decent traits too. Not bad. Not bad. Hearing no response from them, the Veronican warrior frowned and spoke once more, but this time in common language. State your origin. Alaric sent Galliner a knowing look. The latter understood his intentions. He stepped forward and cupped his fists. I am Galliner, a warrior of House Silversword. I come here with the third prince of Estania, the sole heir of House Silversword, His Highness Alaric Silversword. Hearing the array of titles, the Veronican Transcendent was stunned. Can you show us something to verify your identity? He asked cautiously. This was a prince from another nation, so he had to be careful. Alaric took out an identity token from his pocket and tossed it to the man. The token carried the symbol of House Silversword. His name was also engraved on the token. The Veronican Transcendent Knight inspected the token and handed it to one of his subordinates. Sir, the token is real. I have seen the symbol of House Silversword and I'm certain that this is the real deal. The warrior handed the token back to his commander with trembling hands. Hearing this, Veronican Transcendent Knight quickly jumped off his horse and saluted. I apologize if I may have offended, Your Highness. Here is your token. He walked towards Alaric and was about to return the token, but a man with white pupils stopped him. You can give it to me, Sika spoke calmly. The Veronican Transcendent Knight stared deeply at the warrior standing before him. He could feel his sharp aura, an aura that overpowered his own. He is strong. With a nervous smile, he handed the token to Sikas. Here. Sikas took the token and gave it to Alaric. We came here to get a flying permit. We will leave as soon as we get the document. Alaric spoke to the man. No problem. Please follow me back to the city. Your Highness will have to fill in some paperwork before I can give you the permit. The Veronican Transcendent Knight replied. Alaric nodded. Lead the way. The road is dirty. Your Highness can use our horses temporarily. The Veronican Transcendent Knight offered. Hearing this, Alaric smiled and nodded his head. All right, what is your name? I am Shin Dolsuk, the commander of Gilson's army. The Veronican Transcendent Knight introduced himself respectfully. Shin Dol what? That's a weird name. Then I will call you Commander Shin. Would that be all right? Alaric asked as he jumped onto the horse that the other party had provided. Shin Dolsuk nodded with a smile. I'm fine with that, Your Highness. Alaric had a good impression of the man. He wasn't arrogant. He was also respectful and polite. After Alaric's group had climbed onto their horses, Shin Dolsuk led them to the fortress city. Your Highness, can you tell me the reason for your visit? Shin Dolsuk asked. I came here to see your Empress, Alaric replied. Seeing that he had no intention to explain, Shin Dolsuk didn't inquire further. Then I will process your flying permit quickly, so your Highness can meet Her Majesty soon. Alaric smiled at his response. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of Gilson. There was a queue of people waiting to enter the fortress city. Alaric's group didn't have to go through this queue since Shin Dolsuk was there to guide them. The Veronican commander brought them to an outpost where the permits were issued. He processed all the paperwork so Alaric only had to give his personal stamp. After about 15 minutes, a clerk handed him the flying permit. Here's your flying permit, Your Highness. You can present this anywhere within Veronica except the capital. As long as you have that, you can fly all you want almost everywhere in the country. The clerk explained with a flattering smile. Alaric beamed. He handed the clerk some shiny coins. You can have this. The clerk smiled from ear to ear after getting the shiny gold coins. Chapter 560 Veronica's Strict Safety Protocols. Chapter 560 Veronica's Strict Safety Protocols. Congratulations on getting your permit, Your Highness. Alaric smiled at Shin Dolsuk. Without your help, I would have waited for a long time. You have my gratitude, Commander Shin. He patted the Veronican commander's shoulder. It's an honor to help, Your Highness. Shin Dolsuk humbly replied. Alaric slipped a pouch of coins into the commander's hand and sent him a knowing look. Let's see each other again soon. Shin Dolsuk nodded with a smile. You are welcome here any time, Your Highness. Just as Alaric was about to leave, he suddenly thought of a good idea. Have you been to the capital? He asked. Yes, I have been there a couple of times, but why do you ask? Shin Dolsuk stared at him with a baffled look. Alaric smiled faintly. I am not familiar with the way there. How about you join the trip and guide us to the capital? His request took Shin Dolsuk aback. With an awkward smile, he responded. That might be. It's all right. I'm not forcing you to come with us, Commander Shin. If it's not possible, then excuse me. Alaric turned around and walked away. Shin Dolsuk hesitated for a moment before he went to chase him. Wait, Your Highness. Alaric stopped in his tracks and looked at the Veronican commander. What is it? Shin Dolsuk took a deep breath and replied. I will go with you. I will be your guide. Excellent. Alaric beamed. Then prepare your things. We will leave in 30 minutes. Yes, Your Highness. Shin Dolsuk bowed and left with haste. Alaric stared at the guy in amusement. Do we really need someone to guide us to the capital? Nivissa's voice drifted into his ears. Alaric turned his head and saw her walking towards him, staring at him with a skeptical expression. He shook his head and let out a smile. We don't need to. but bringing him along would make things more convenient for us. We might encounter a situation where a local like him would be useful. Nivis shrugged. Alaric handed the flying permit to Galliner. Keep it and make sure you don't lose it. Yes, Lord Venerable. Galliner took the document and kept it in his inner pocket. The group waited outside the outpost, but they didn't have to wait for long because Shin Dolsuk arrived in 15 minutes. The Veronican commander's face was covered in sweat. He was breathing heavily as if he had run back and forth without a break. Your Highness, I'm ready, he said with a salute. Have you already informed your subordinates? Alaric asked. A commander suddenly leaving for an errand wasn't an unusual occurrence, but it might lead to dissatisfaction among his subordinates if he left without notice. Shin Dolsuk nodded. I have informed my deputy. Good. Let's go. Alaric jumped onto the draconic lion's back. The 10 transcendents he brought followed suit. Shin Dolsuk looked at the terrifying monster and hesitated, but knowing that Alaric was in a hurry, he nervously jumped onto the beast. Zephyr issued a roar before it soared into the air with a whoosh. The residents of Gilson watched the draconic lion slowly disappear, still feeling a lingering sense of nervousness and fear from seeing a powerful catastrophe-grade beast. Commander Shin, were you able to say goodbye to your family? Alaric asked the Veronican commander who was struggling to keep his balance. Shin Dolsuk shook his head. I don't have a family, Your Highness. I was an orphan who grew up in the military. Alaric didn't expect him to have this kind of story. That was thoughtless of me. Shin Dolsuk waved his hand and smiled. It's fine. I don't mind. Alaric no longer asked him personal questions and changed the subject. Do you have a permanent residence in Gilson? Shin Dolsuk shook his head. I thought of owning a house recently, but I was always busy, so I didn't have the time to find one. I usually rent out a room in a nice inn, but most of the time, I just stay at the camp with the troops. I see. Alaric sighed inwardly. He wondered how the guy could remain this positive despite the difficulties he had faced. Along the way, they passed by several cities and towns. They had to stop by in each place to present the flying permit, and this delayed the journey. Your country is really strict about this, Alaric remarked with a hint of displeasure. They would have already arrived at the capital if it weren't for the stops and various checkpoints. Shin Dolsuk sent him an apologetic look. Veronica had a surge of visitors in the past decades, so the higher-ups made some changes to the regulations to ensure the safety of the citizens. Veronica was known for its cleanliness and safety. They also had many amazing sceneries that were famous across the land. For these reasons, visitors would flock to the country hoping to see the beauty of the place. I think it's a good idea, actually. If you follow this method, you can spot spies or suspicious people very easily. Nivis suddenly joined the conversation. Shin Dolsuk turned his head at this blue-haired woman. He didn't know her relationship with Alaric, but he noticed that they were close. He quickly pulled his eyes away from her to avoid misunderstandings. Are the women in Estania as beautiful as her? Veronica was known for its beautiful women, but he had never seen a Veronican woman who was more beautiful than this blue-haired woman. You have a point. I should suggest this to Leonard the next time we meet. Alaric rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Several hours later, they stopped by at Bunsenham, a major city with millions of residents. As soon as they landed in front of the city, a group of soldiers approached them with stern faces. Do you have a flying permit? Asked the soldiers who were doing the routine check. Galliner presented him with the permit. Brothers, I am Shin Dolsuk, the commander of Gilson's army. I am here to guide these important guests to the capital. Shin Dolsuk spoke with the soldiers. Chapter 561 Park Sagwa, the Duchess of Ulmunson. Chapter 561 Park Sagwa, the Duchess of Ulmunson. The soldiers were surprised to hear his introduction. An older soldier who seemed to be the leader of the bunch stepped forward and asked, If you are from Gilson, why go all the way here to guide them? Shin Dolsuk smiled and responded. This is His Highness Alaric of Estania. No one in his group is familiar with the way, so I volunteered to guide them to the capital. Hearing this, the soldiers were stunned. The Prince of Estania? Is he the Crown Prince of Estania? No wonder he looks like an important person. The older soldier glared at his subordinates and quickly approached Alaric with an apologetic smile. I apologize if we may have inconvenienced, Your Highness. Alaric waved his hand indifferently. Just make it quick. Of course. We will do it fast so you can head over to the capital. The soldiers quickly inspected the flying permit and all the items they brought, but under the pressure from their leader, they didn't make a thorough inspection and just did it for show. After about 10 minutes, the inspection was completed. We have checked everything, sir. There are no issues with their items. One soldier reported, his face was covered in sweat. Good. The older soldier smiled warmly at Alaric and told them that they were free to leave. Alaric tossed him a few gold coins and left with his group. In the next moment, The draconic lion soared into the sky and flew off into the distance. The group had to stop by 3 more cities before they arrived at Almunson, the second largest city in all of Veronica. It was also the last stop for all flying beasts since flying was restricted in the capital. The person who greeted them at the entrance of the city was surprisingly venerable. It was a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. She looked quite young on the surface, but Alaric knew that she was way older than she looked. "Oh my! It's an honor to meet the famous Alaric Silversword. You can call me Park Sagwa." The woman introduced herself. Alaric hadn't heard of her, but her attributes brought him quite the surprise. She wasn't that strong, but she wasn't weak either. Compared to all the venerables he had encountered, she could be ranked in the mid-range. She was a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster with unique sets of integrated monster traits. She wasn't specialized in large-scale battles, but based on her traits, she was skilled in single combat. "The honor is mine, Mississippi Park Sagwa." Alaric maintained a kind attitude towards his elders. "Miss." Park Sagwa covered her mouth and giggled in amusement. She had never been called Miss for a long time, and it made her quite pleased, especially when it came from a young and handsome man like Alaric. "Park Sagwa? Is she that person?" While they were exchanging pleasantries, Shin Dol-suk was in disbelief when she recognized her identity. Park Sagwa was one of the most famous figures in all of Veronica. She had only recently become a venerable, but her exploits were not ordinary. She was known for her skills with the dagger. She was a highly trained assassin who had never failed a mission. Because of her 100% success rate and her undeniable beauty, people started calling her Bloody Iris. "How about you join me for a meal? I'm sure your subordinates are also tired from the journey." Park Sagwa invited him with a charming smile. Alaric hesitated. He couldn't just reject her since her identity was quite special. She might also be offended if he were to reject her outright. "All right, it would be a pleasure to dine with Your Grace." He agreed. He felt reluctant, but he didn't show it on his face. "Perfect. My carriage is ready. Please follow me, Your Highness." Beaming, Park Sagwa did a this-way gesture. Alaric understood his intentions and walked alongside her. Why did she invite me to dine with her? Does she have some motives? Alaric thought to himself, his heart turning cold. Following behind them, Nivis mumbled to herself. "I don't like that woman. She seems to be hiding something." Shin Dol-suk was walking next to her, so he heard her words clearly. With a terrified look, he reminded her. "Miss, you shouldn't speak so carelessly. Her Grace is the Duchess of Almunson. One word from her and we will all lose our heads." Nivis scoffed at his words, not taking him seriously at all. Park Sagwa was a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster, so she could hear her voice, but she didn't seem to be furious. She was only amused at the unexpected comment from someone she deemed to be Alaric's servant. "Your Highness's subordinate doesn't seem to like me," she remarked with a chuckle. Alaric smiled helplessly. "Please don't mind her words. She can be mean sometimes, even to me." "Is that so? What an amusing girl." She giggled in response. Soon, he boarded a luxurious carriage with Park Sagwa, while his subordinates had to travel on horseback with the Duchess's people. The Duchess's territory was at the heart of the city, and it occupied almost 30% of the entire city's total landmass. There was a whole town in her own territory, and she explained that they were families of the people working for her. Inside her territory, he saw a big coliseum. That coliseum was constructed by my late father. He loved to watch warriors in battle, so he built it mostly for his personal entertainment, but it later became a family symbol. Now, we hold tournaments annually and people have to pay so they can watch the event. Park Sagwa observed his expression while she explained this. She knew that some people didn't enjoy this kind of activity. Alaric didn't give much of a reaction since Estania had the same tradition. He only felt that it was a smart move to turn the tradition into a way of making money. "I should suggest this to Mom when I return home." Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.